How did Horrid Henry go from this
You are the best mum in the world!
all the way to this? Well, before we get into things, let me give you a little background. Horrid Henry was adapted from a book series from Francesca Simon. It originally aired on CITV and was a staple for the UK network in the early 2000s. In 2018, the entire series was broadcast on Nickelodeon, making Henry an official Nicktoon. Let's just hope he didn't bully SpongeBob too much. More recently, Netflix produced the 5th series. So, who's this show all about? Henry is the star, and he lives up to the title most of the time. He screams throughout each episode, and he's not afraid to talk directly to the audience. He's wild, intelligent, and always in trouble. You'd think the show would set out to teach him life lessons, but it doesn't. Instead, we get maximum comedy from Henry's deceit and creativity. Also, he regularly turns into a vicious dinosaur. In his head, anyway. Henry's brother Perfect Peter, whom Henry lovingly refers to as Worm, is a complete contrast. Peter is naive, sweet, and strives to be a good boy. Their parents, Mom and Dad, spend most of their time yelling at Henry and telling him not to be so horrid. Supporting characters typically have an adjective in front of their name that sums them up completely, like Rude Ralph, Harry's best friend who's, you guessed it, rude. Henry's rival is Moody Margaret, his next-door neighbor. She leads a club, the Secret Club, which frequently faces off against Henry's Purple Hand Gang. She's spoiled, angry, and honestly just as destructive as Henry. There are tons of other classmates and teachers that we'll meet along the way. From start to finish, we're gonna cover all the ways Henry has earned his Horrid title. Let's get started. In episode 1, Horrid Henry's Tricks and Treats, we're introduced to Henry itemizing a treasured chest of mischief. Henry is annoyed when he has to take Peter, who has a seriously lame bunny outfit, trick-or-treating. So Henry decides to truly scare him by cutting Peter's hair. For the first time, in what will be countless throughout the series, Henry gets grounded. Hearing the sound of trick-or-treaters, Henry gets an idea and exclaims his catchphrase. He decides to sneak out as the Dark Avenger. It's about as threatening as you'd think. He sneaks out and steals fistfuls of candy while Dad is distracted. Out in the neighborhood, Henry's classmates Gorgeous Gurinder and Lazy Linda get spooked by an evil-looking werewolf mask rising above the hedges. Is it a monster? Nope, it's just Henry stealing candy. Next, he does the same trick to more kids from Ashton Primary School and finds something even sweeter than treats, a chance to trick.
Ah!
I am the Dark Avenger!
Henry goes on a bit of a scare rampage. Back at home, Dad is engrossed in TV. Who can blame him? He goes to Henry's room to check, but completely falls for a dummy. Henry sets his sights on Moody Margaret. She doesn't fall for it at first, but he distracts Moody away from her bag to steal it. By the end of the night, Henry counts his candy. This episode really encapsulated the comical horribleness of its main character and seriously sets the tone for the rest of the show. Episode 2, Horrid Henry's Hobby, starts with Henry digging through cereal boxes in search of a golden gizmo when the unthinkable happens. Perfect Peter gets one instead. Henry screams, "No!" a recurring scream that happens almost every episode. The next day at school, the kids are showing their different colored gizmos when Henry lies and says he has a golden one at home. The other kids don't believe him, so Henry says he'll bring it tomorrow. To get the gizmo, Henry uses a foolproof method: lying. He tells Peter that gold gizmos are cursed and result in death. We see some hilarious instances. Peter still isn't convinced until Henry says he saw the giant flying curse bird of tragedy out the window, and then is followed up with a splat. It's really just Rude Ralph helping Henry sell the scheme. Later on, Margaret demands to see the gizmo as soon as possible. She is mesmerized and says she'll trade him the gizmo for a Double Drencher 3000, a totally safe water gun.
It's beautiful.
The deal goes off as expected. One problem: classic Henry. He tells his classmates to bring their best trades for the real gizmo tomorrow. That night, Mom makes Henry give Peter back the gizmo, and he completely freaks out. Henry empties cereal boxes in different, creative, and hilarious ways until he has more than enough golden gizmos. Unfortunately, his parents catch on. The next day at school, he goes to make his trade and finds out that his parents had given the rest of the gizmos to his classmates, making the deal worthless. But I guess sometimes being horrible doesn't pay off. Episode 3, Horrid Henry and the Bogey Babysitter, has Henry facing off against someone just as horrible as he is. But for now, he is thrilled that his parents can't get a babysitter for their night out, as Henry had scared them all off. Except one, rabid Rebecca. She's huge, imposing, and even mom and dad seem scared of her. She says to Henry that she demands good. This should be a disaster. Rebecca kicks Henry off the TV and makes Peter serve her food. Henry and Rebecca try to one-up each other in increasingly awful pranks until he calls the police on her. The only problem is, it didn't work. She sends the brothers to bed early.
Now, what's this intruder look like?
10 feet tall, teeth the size of icebergs, and she's watching our TV right now!
Henry decides to stand up to Rebecca once and for all. He sees her get scared of a toy spider and gets Peter to lure her upstairs, where real spiders wait. Henry uses the captured spiders to lock her up under the stairs. The brothers get a night of TV and ice cream. Their parents come home just as Henry unlocks Rebecca, and she threatens to tear him limb from limb in front of them. Sometimes to beat bad, you gotta be bad too. That's never a problem for Horrid Henry. Episode 5, Moody Margaret Moves In, focuses on another of Henry's main rivals. While Margaret's parents are on holiday, she stays at Henry's house. Even worse, as punishment, she has to stay in his room. Margaret gets dropped off and uses guest courtesy to get whatever she wants. Henry and Peter carry Margaret's things to the bedroom, but at the top of the stairs, Henry throws them and blames Peter. Margaret plays it cool. Okay, maybe not. At dinner, Margaret is just as moody and lies that Henry kicked her under the table. He decides to get her back. The next day, Henry lures Margaret downstairs and sneaks back into his room. He plants his diary in a locked box in front of her, and oh no, he accidentally dropped the key. In the diary, Margaret reads that Peter will never tell on a guest, and Henry would be blamed if anything ever happened to him.
My life would be over, and it'd all be Margaret's fault.
So, in a totally twisted move, she shoves Peter in a garbage bin and almost gets taken away by the garbage men until Mom intervenes. Afterward, in the kitchen, Peter is caught between telling on a guest and telling a lie. Peter fesses that Margaret was at fault. His parents want to kick her out, but she has nowhere to go. Oh wait, Henry pretended to be his parents through email to lure them back. He expects to get heavily grounded, but it's only a trip back to his room. Jumping ahead to episode 9, Horrid Henry Eats Out shows our hero, if you can call him that, getting a taste of fine dining. The episode starts with Henry being brought home from school by his teacher, Miss Battleaxe, a mean old lady who loves getting kids in trouble. A natural enemy to Henry. On the way to his room, Henry's day takes a turn for the worse. He has to go out to a nice restaurant with his family. The horror! The horror! After some antics, Henry is out the door and on his way to restaurant Le Poche, when he receives some troubling news. His cousin stuck-up Steve will be joining them. Steve lives up to his name, rich, aloof, and immediately tries to flex on Henry at dinner. The meal begins and we see some hilarious satire of fine dining. Steve tries to show up the table by ordering escargot, but can't stomach it. Meanwhile, Henry loves it. Guess he wasn't so fancy after all.
Oh, Steve, they're so scrumptious. Oh.
At a different table, Miss Battleaxe sits with her mother, hilariously named Mrs. Battleaxe. Henry approaches and is surprisingly really nice. Henry isn't done pranking Steve yet. He tells the chef to add more hot sauce to his cousin's meal, and the results are explosive. Dinner wraps up with Henry on top of the world, with his family off for fast food instead. Episode 10, Who Stole Mr. Kill, portrays an unthinkable crime, the theft of Henry's prized teddy bear. Henry settles into making his room a mess and notices Mr. Kill, great name by the way, is missing from his dresser. Henry puts on some slick sunglasses and begins investigating. Henry starts by accusing his dad, but it doesn't add up. He begins to investigate Margaret next. He's really stealthy about it. Okay, maybe not. Still, he finds no evidence, and Mr. Kill is still at large. Henry decides to investigate Peter next. He ransacks Peter's room and attempts to get an admission, even by borderline torture, but it's no use.
Mr. Kill? Please, I don't know. Last chance?
Peter didn't steal the teddy either. Mom saves the day by showing Henry she washed Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill is left on the rack to dry all night as punishment, but Henry has a trick up his sleeve. You just can't separate a boy from his bear. Let's see how Henry does at the holiday. Episode 13 is Horrid Henry's Christmas. It's Christmas Eve and Henry's family is shopping. He simply goes wild, lost in a Christmas gift madness. Later on, Henry helps tidy up ahead of a visit from Stuck-Up Steve, but it spirals out of control. Stuck-Up Steve arrives and immediately gets into a face-off with Henry, until Henry's dad suggests they do a competition to build the biggest snowman. Henry and Steve fight with their snowmen, or should I say, snow lumps, when Peter unveils his masterpiece. Both of the bullies, Henry and Steve, destroy it and get back to battle. Their fighting causes snow to fall from the building's roof and traps them both. Man, karma is ice cold. On the night before Christmas, Henry sneaks down to check out the presents under the tree to find all the gifts for Steve, except a pair of socks. He swaps the recipient labels. The next morning, Henry doesn't waste time pranking Steve. That's embarrassing.
Wait! Breakfast first!
Every member of the family gets the wrong labeled present, with Henry getting the coveted galactic goo shooter. Henry didn't even get coal. Maybe Santa doesn't exist after all. Episode 19, Horrid Henry and the Secret Club, introduces two crucial factions in the series, the Secret Club and the Purple Hand Gang. Henry gets the password to Margaret's secret club and begins eating their biscuits. He says they'll never get past the Purple Hand Gang security, only to come back to find his fort has been raided. Margaret challenges Henry to a series of trials to decide which club is the best. Some of the tests are seriously gross. This sequence is the first glimpse we get at Henry's hamster, Fang, a fittingly vicious pet, who frequently aids in Henry's scheming. After a bike jousting match, Margaret threatens to destroy the Purple Hand Gang flag unless Henry admits the secret club is the best. He gives in, but then traps Margaret until she admits this.
Purple Hand Gang is best!
In the end, both Henry and Margaret end up trapped on the flagpole with Susan and Peter watching. Maybe they're both losers. Episode 20, Horrid Henry's Perfect Day, begins with Henry seeing a fun fair out the car window, but his hopes of attending are dampened when Mom sees this horrible report card. In a surreal dream sequence, Henry goes on trial. He gets sentenced to never going to the fair. When he wakes up, Henry decides for once and for all to be good. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. He begins his new life by trying to bring his parents juice, but Peter gets in the way. Henry spills it everywhere and gets the blame. He can't help some of his horrid instincts and trolls Peter on a day out. But he commits, and soon both brothers are competing to see who can be better.
Being good is really hard work.
At dinner, Peter is openly hostile and accuses Henry of being good only to attend the fair. Instead of lashing out, Henry forgives him and gets a halo. Ooh, shiny. Peter and Margaret, dressed as pirates, charge in on Henry when he's gardening for his parents, but he refuses to engage. It leads to Peter accidentally throwing a sack of manure in Mom's face. As a reward for good behavior, Henry gets to go to the fun fair. Having achieved his goal, he subjects his parents to a seriously insane ride. I guess being good does work sometimes, when you can use it to get exactly what you want. Episode 21, Perfect Peter's Horrid Day, introduces one of the funniest side characters. It all starts with Henry causing chaos at dinner. He throws food and fills the roast chicken with a balloon, which is actually pretty creative. In the turmoil, Peter turns the camera and explains his dilemma. No one notices how good he is because of Henry's antics. He decides to be horrid instead. Ahead of a visit from their great aunt Greta, Peter gives Henry a taste of his own medicine, at home and outside. His worst action is putting a giant slug in a box of chocolates to be gifted to their great aunt.
Peter, tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. Go on, Peter. You can do it.
Great Aunt Greta finally arrives. She inexplicably thinks Henry is a girl named Henrietta and Peter is a teenager. Although she is senile, she really gets along with her grandnephews. But I don't know how long that will last after Peter gives her this little surprise. Gross. Inside, Henry discovers the slug-filled candy box and can't help but feel impressed. He shoves the slugs down his pants so Peter doesn't get the credit for his horrible deed. When the box is revealed to be empty, Henry gets the blame. His mom stops him from running away, and all the slugs fly out directly onto Great Aunt Greta, who runs away. In the end, Henry gets the blame and Peter goes back to being perfect. Maybe that's for the best. Episode 25, Horrid Henry's Time Capsule, shows a significant day at Ashton Primary School. The burying of a time capsule, with each student storing their favorite toy. Henry wants to contribute slime, but when Mum forbids him, he decides to take Peter's bunny.
Lovely idea, Peter. You are a good boy.
Henry attends the time capsule burying ceremony and makes fun of it, but they get rained out and the capsule is set to be buried later on. At home, Peter is distraught over Bunny's disappearance. Dad is wise to it and says Henry has to bring the bunny back if he ever wants pocket money again. Henry, Rude Ralph, and a few other hooligans dig up buried treasure and find capsules from years past. One problem, they're all empty. At school, Henry urges the class to bury a new capsule in defiance of the thieves. That night, Henry watches the capsule when a mysterious intruder approaches. In a shocking twist, it's Ashton Primary headmistress Miss Oddbod. I did not see that coming. Miss Oddbod admits to taking from the capsules as a way to remember all her former students. She agrees to bring Bunny back, and Peter is reunited with him the next morning. Henry fully expects pocket money for his good deed, but ends up getting blamed for the destruction of the school's gardens. Better luck next time, Henry. Episode 30, Horrid Henry's Hideo video, is by far one of the silliest episodes. We find Henry inspired by a TV competition, offering £200 for a funny disaster video.
What I could do with £200? Roadhog! Burn it up! Burn it up!
He cons Peter to borrow a camera and sets out to capture chaos. He gets off to a hilarious start. Poor cat. This seems good enough, but after showing Margaret, she deletes it. Henry insults her and she vows revenge. Henry sets up other disasters, including baiting Peter into a bike crash, but they all backfire. Henry's mom announces his oldest cousin, Prissy Polly, is visiting. Like stuck-up Steve, Polly is spoiled, uptight, and ultimately self-centered, which seems to be a common theme with characters in this show. Henry volunteers to record Polly's visit, but he lays a trap. Little does he know, Margaret has something up her sleeve too. That's gotta hurt.
And my adorable little cousins.
Later on, Henry sees himself on TV, just not in the way he thought. It turns out Margaret secretly filmed him and won the prize money. Just as Henry flies into a rage, Dad gets a call that a company wants Henry to do an ad for them, for an even greater sum of £250. In the ad, Henry is dressed as a giant pizza and does a ridiculous dance. Even worse, Margaret tapes it. Can Henry catch a break? Does he deserve one? Remains to be seen. Episode 44, Horrid Henry's Holiday, finds his family on the road in France. Henry wants to go to Cabin of Fun, which is more of a water park than a campground. He's devastated to learn that they will be roughing it in a tent. Henry gets a taste of the great outdoors with no TV and a disgusting outhouse. He complains the whole time. Henry is afraid to swim. He is really not adept in nature at all. At night, Peter hears some animal noises that scare him from using the bathroom. Henry accompanies Peter, but in a move of pure evil, locks his brother inside. Peter escapes and rats out Henry, who tries to get sent home as a punishment. Mom doesn't budge, so Henry comes up with a plan. Henry causes all kinds of chaos at the camp.
What is it, Peter? What's the matter?
He's eventually sent into the forest to find wood, but ends up getting it from the posts in other tents instead. That night, it rains heavily and Henry's family's tent collapses. In the end, they holiday at the water park, just like Henry wanted. The second to last episode of Series 1, Horrid Henry's Wedding, has Henry in the most unlikely situation yet, part of a wedding party, and it's absolute insanity. Prissy Polly is getting married to Pimply Paul, and Henry is set to be a page boy. Mayhem starts immediately when Henry allows his cat Fluffy to destroy his dress shirt. He tries his best to get out of the ceremony, but nothing works. At church, Henry arrives in style. He just forgot to tell his family they're sitting in the splash zone.
Oh, look at you! You're Fluffy! Don't you dare touch me, all right?
During the ceremony, Henry steps on Polly's dress and it rips. So cringy, but she takes it in stride and doesn't seem to mind. During a weird song performance, Henry distracts himself playing with Polly's ring, but it goes down the drain, so he gives her a plastic replacement. At the reception, the speeches start and Henry causes chaos under the table, but he really overdoes it with the cake. Mom says she'll never take Henry to another wedding, and he celebrates. Series 1's finale, Horrid Henry's dance class, puts him in another environment where he's out of his element. While other boys in his class are in karate, Henry is stuck in dance. Even worse, they're set to perform in front of the whole class. Peter, of course, loves it and taunts Henry. After a talk with Ralph, Henry decides he's going to take action. The next day at dress rehearsal, Henry tries to get thrown out by purposefully disrupting the dress rehearsal by running into the other dancers, but Madame Tutu will not give up on him. On the night of the performance, Henry swaps out the backing track CD. The dance is just as much of a mess as you'd expect. Madame Tutu puts him behind a prop bush, out of sight from the crowd, when he accidentally karate kicks it down. Instead of freaking out, he does karate moves and it blends seamlessly with the dance. Series 1 ends with Henry actually impressing the adults. A surprisingly sweet conclusion to a series of horribleness. The Series 2 premiere, Horrid Henry's Favorite Day, starts with Henry seeing a magazine competition where he can win a gross Class 0 game. Henry's favorite series about a class of kids being disgusting. He can only win by being nice to Peter for a full week. Difficulty level? Impossible. Instead, he tries to fake it by dressing Ralph up as his brother. The plan fails when Mom reads the details on the submission form and says Henry has to be nice to his brother for real. The next day, Henry tells Peter about the contest. Peter puts Henry to work right away. He's made to serve for Peter's best boys club and finds it really miserable. Next, Peter asks Henry to get him next week's Fluffy Fairy comic, which isn't out yet. Henry sees Margaret passing and reasons that her parents get her everything, so she must have the comic. He infiltrates the secret club for it again, and I gotta admit, it's kind of awesome. Henry gives the comic to Peter, who wants to color in it. Henry gets Peter to count to 100 in a game of hide and seek and returns the comic secretly. Except this time, he sets off one of Fort's traps. Henry gets out just in time and returns to Peter. In the end, Mom decides to sign the form, but when the package comes in the mail, it's the new Fluffy Fairy game instead. Sorry, Henry. Episode 5, Horrid Henry Gets a Job, starts its story right away with Dad telling Henry he needs to start working on Saturdays, cleaning the park. In no time, Henry is working. He comes home dirty and exhausted. The next day at school, a new job is posted on the school bulletin board. Gee, I wonder what it could be. On Saturday, Henry inspects his classmates and puts them to work. He watches from afar when he notices Peter crawling around a flower bed. Henry terrorizes him in this cool sequence. When anxious Andrew gets stung on his finger, Henry takes him to the shed where his boss, Parky, is having tea with Margaret. Henry gets mad at her for stealing his job, doing nothing. Where can I apply for that? Henry and Margaret get in a power struggle. Both kids order the rest of their classmates to follow contradictory instructions. It spirals out of control. The rollers' paths reveal the red-saddled weedworm that Peter had been seeking throughout the episode. Henry and Margaret get paid for their work, but on the way back, classmates remind them of the money promised for doing their work and chase Margaret and Henry away. They really deserve each other. Alright, on to episode 10, Horrid Henry and the Name Game. It's Sunday and Henry is sleeping in. He joins the breakfast table late and is sent outside to get more milk when he notices a new furry friend. They end up keeping the cat, but Peter and Henry start fighting immediately about whose cat it is. In a vote, Peter's name for the cat, Tittles, is selected after it's revealed that Henry fakes votes with participants like the Queen. Henry then asks a radio host to endorse his name, Buster. The next day, a mass vote is called. Peter excels while Henry only gets the support of Rude Ralph. Henry gets votes the old-fashioned way, bribery.
Silly me! I nearly forgot to vote for you, Henry. Here you go.
The election is a real nail-biter, but even with Henry's cheating, Tiddles wins. That night, Tiddles runs away and is adopted by Margaret, who reveals the cat, now called Phoebe, is actually a girl and had a whole litter of kittens. Aren't they cute? Episode 11, Horrid Henry and the Gross DVD, brings back memories of watching movies you weren't supposed to. It opens with Peter hogging the DVD player with his lame Happy Hippo box that he got from the dentist. Outside, Rude Ralph shows Henry an even better DVD, Gross Class 0 DVD. Henry goes back inside to get control of the DVD player. He lures Peter off the couch by lying about a Happy Hippo parade. Henry puts on the DVD, and it really is gross. But he is quickly interrupted by Prissy Polly and her new baby vomiting Vera. Vera is noisy and makes it impossible for Henry to watch his new DVD. We quickly find out how Vera got her nickname. Ew. Henry volunteers to clean up Vera's puke to get his mom and cousin out of the room. It isn't long before Dad interrupts. Henry decides to sneak the TV and DVD player to his room, but he falls, gets discovered, and is punished. On his last resort, Henry asks Margaret to watch his DVD at their clubhouse. The secret club members vote, and they play the movie, which turns out to be the disc for Happy Hippos instead. At dinner that night, Dad brought home Gross Class 0 to watch with Henry. Only problem is it's way past his bedtime. Episode 20, Horrid Henry's Heist, is a caper for the books. We start off with Henry trying to get out of school with a bad case of the Black Plague. Mom doesn't buy it. At school, each student is supposed to make a poster for Ashton Primary's anniversary. Henry makes a pretty creative drawing, but it unfortunately portrays the school as a prison. As Ralph points out this may be rude, Margaret sweeps the poster away. Later, Henry makes a plan to steal the poster back, and Margaret surprisingly volunteers to help. That night at the school's costume party, Henry, Ralph, and Margaret spring into action.
Ooh, balloons!
Go away, Twinkle Toes. They're mine.
Using stealth and cunning, Henry and the gang fake a leak to lure Ms. Oddbot into dropping off the posters in an abandoned classroom. Henry throws his poster out the window to Margaret. She's supposed to destroy it, but has plans of her own. At the poster unveiling ceremony, Margaret says she found Henry in the hall and gives it to Ms. Oddbot. What comes next is unexpected. Turns out the poster they threw down to Margaret was actually hers, leading to Henry getting all the credit. I guess there is no honor among thieves. Margaret should have known better. Let's move on to episode 24, Horrid Henry on TV. You might remember Wife Swap. Well, Henry is gonna be on Kid Swap, a show where kids will trade houses with other classmates, and the child who stays the longest at the new house wins a cash prize. Weepy William, who's constantly crying, goes to Henry's house. Henry goes to Margaret's where he's spoiled, and Margaret is stuck at William's, where she starts bossing his parents around. Margaret tries to leave as soon as possible, but Henry decides to stay.
Here it is, Henry, and I've got you the new Killer Boy Rat CD as well.
Do you have the new Super Mega Soaker yet, Henry?
He traps Margaret's parents in an attic to keep them away from the door so they can't see Margaret asking to come home. But he has a frightening realization. He begs to go home, but somehow Margaret's parents love him. Henry tries his best to get kicked out, but nothing works until he sits down in Margaret's dad's chair, and he immediately kicks Henry out. At William's house, Margaret terrorizes his parents to tears, and William wins the Kid Swap. He's really excited. By the end, Peter and Henry are fighting over the remote, everything back exactly to where it's supposed to be. Episode 30, Horrid Henry Gets Married, takes us to the future. But for now, it's just a normal day. Henry blasts Margaret with a bubble gun to steal her biscuit and runs full force into the fence. He wakes up years later, looking the same but with a 5 o'clock shadow. Can't imagine what Henry will be up to as an adult. Maybe jail time. Henry wakes up in Margaret's house and is told that it's his house too. He's going to marry Margaret. Oh man. But before the wedding, he has to take Linda's baby on a walk.
Oh, take baby to park, do the shopping, cook dinner, collect wedding suit. I can't believe this is happening.
But pawns the child off to Ralph, who's much more fit in the future. Henry tries to do what he would do as a kid. It doesn't go as expected. Back at home, Henry and Margaret wait for Henry's parents to arrive, and they see Peter on TV. He's a celebrity chef in the future. Not only that, but he rolls up in a hot rod car with 2 mini Peter children. Henry introduces them to the bubble gun. It's the day of Henry's wedding, and Margaret says, "I do." Now, it's Henry's turn. Henry slips on water from the guns and wakes up as a kid again. Phew, being an adult is no fun. Series 2, Episode 34, Horrid Henry Takes the Biscuit, starts with Henry being, you guessed it, horrid. He fights with Peter and calls his mom to spill her pan of biscuits, fresh from the oven. He gets sent to his room. Mom tells Peter that the biscuits are full of carrots, Henry's least favorite. Henry steals the rest of the biscuits and shares them with Ralph. Word spreads, and the biscuits become popular among the rest of the class. Soon, Henry has a sweets trading empire.
Unlimited use of your crimson cutlass till the end of term.
Deal.
And the pirate hat to go with it.
Deal.
Peter discovers Henry selling off Mom's treats and gets upset. Peter asks Mom for the recipe, but it's a secret. In a rare instance of Peter misbehaving, he lies to his mom that he'll keep the contents confidential. The next day at school, no one lines up for Henry's biscuits. He heads to the gym and sees an auction for the recipe. Henry unwittingly bids £100 and Peter reveals a secret ingredient: carrots. Henry screams. This kid has to have a sore throat most of the time. Episode 44, Horrid Henry Says Goodbye, has a more dramatic setup as Henry's dad gets a job and plans on moving out of town. Henry attempts to convince them to stay by acting grateful for the current neighborhood. He even tries playing nice with Margaret. It doesn't last long. Henry rallies his friends to his house to say how much they appreciate Henry to convince Mom. Nothing works. At school, Henry's classmates and teachers are thrilled he's going. Can we really blame them?
Listen up! I've got some really bad news!
Oh, you're not moving after all.
No, I am moving!
When Henry hears his dad is getting a going-away present from his coworkers, Henry tries to get his classmates to do the same. Not one of the guests brings Henry a present, until at long last, Ralph gifts him a snow globe. Henry is upset it's not a Gross Point Zero game and throws a tantrum. Ungrateful much? Later on, Henry apologizes, and it's actually a somewhat sweet moment. Henry comes home and his parents break the news. They're not moving after all. At least he got a snow globe out of it. Episode 47, Horrid Henry in the Go-Kart, gets off to a fast and furious start, with Henry and his classmates racing downhill. He crashes and brings the wreckage home. Henry and his father decide to make a new, better kart, but they get a little carried away. When Henry and his dad pull up to the hardware store for supplies, it's full of other dads who have the same idea. It's a wild scene, with some of the best animation in the series to date.
No, they're mine! Mine!
The kids start finishing their karts, and Henry's is by far the least impressive. Worst of all, Margaret's vehicle is unfairly battery-powered. The race soon starts, and the riders drop out one by one until it's just Henry and Margaret, who cruises past Henry. Luckily, Peter, who is spectating, throws in a secret weapon, fairy dust. Henry wins. Well, you can't say that wasn't exciting. Episode 48, Horrid Henry Goes to the Movies, has Henry and Peter going to the cinema. One problem, it's the Happy Hippos movie and they're going with Prissy Polly. Both brothers make Dad run late, and he has the speed to make it. Pimply Paul gets Henry hyped up on a scary movie poster. Henry would much rather see it. Paul tries to get him in, but Polly won't hear it, and they're all stuck seeing Happy Hippos. Just as they're about to head into the theater, Paul tears up Henry's ticket, blames it on him, and uses the excuse to get them both a new ticket for the scary movie. Secretly. Hope it's not too intense. Oh geez. Which brings us to the Series 2 finale, Horrid Henry and the Perfect Pirate Parade. Henry and Ralph are playing Purple Hand Gang pirates when Margaret spies on them and gets an idea. The secret club will host a pirate parade, and they won't invite Henry. The night of the parade is the same as Peter's poetry competition. Henry psychs Peter out and makes him too nervous to perform. His mom does not fall for his tactics. That night, Henry reads a pirate book that inspires him to curse Margaret. Then, he puts his plan into action. Henry tells Margaret that any pirate with a name starting with M will suffer consequences. It scares Margaret and she tattles. Mom is livid yet again. On the day of the parade, Henry dresses up as a pirate ghost and scares the heck out of Peter. Henry gets a treasure map from him and digs up the booty. Once the rest of the parade gets wise, they chase him away, but Henry is victorious, until he gets the gold coins taken back. Sometimes a pirate's life isn't easy. We're rocking and rolling to the Series 3 premiere, Horrid Henry, Rockstar. But we're not on stage yet. Henry is just having a fantasy, which Mum firmly puts down. Henry decides to write a letter to his rock idol, Ed Banger.
Out of my way, worm!
You dropped something, Henry.
That's mine, worm!
On the way to school, Henry throws the letter into the mailbox but looks away at the last second and misses Margaret stealing it. Ralph tells Henry their band, the Zero Zombies, got a new gig. When Henry gets sent out of the class, Margaret begins working on Ralph. She tells Ralph that she will find the band a new lead singer, who's revealed to be none other than Margaret. This should be a scream. Literally. After waiting for a while, Henry writes another letter to Ed Banger. Meanwhile, at rehearsal, Margaret has let the stardom go to her head and bosses the boys in the band around. During practice, Ralph discovers Henry's unmailed letter and sends it out. Later, Banger's response finally arrives. Henry ends up making the gig, and it seriously rocks, with a little help from a backing track. Episode 2, Horrid Henry and the Special Spinner, starts with Henry refusing to do his homework, so he gets his TV, computer, and boombox taken away. What's he supposed to do now? Read? No. Next, his parents come for his gizmos, but then Dad gifts him some state-of-the-art entertainment. Okay, it's actually really lame. Henry starts out horrible at yo-yoing, but Great Aunt Greta shows him a thing or two. Great Aunt Greta is a yo-yo prodigy. She tells Henry how she won a competition back in her day.
Just because you're a gal, Henrietta, doesn't mean you can't be a special spinner too.
With her training, Henry becomes a yo-yo master. Henry is so skilled, his classmate's father asks him to be in a documentary. The night it airs, his parents are too busy enjoying his confiscated items to be bothered. Parents of the year right there. Eventually, they tune in and are impressed with Henry, but he just uses their distraction as a way to get back his stuff. I guess the comics and boombox were cooler after all. Series 3, Episode 7, Horrid Henry and the Climbing Frame Clincher, is another classic face-off between the Purple Hand Gang and the Secret Club. It all starts when Henry and Margaret get in a fight about who gets the climbing frame at break time. They get sent to Miss Oddbod's office. While waiting, they dream of a battle for the climbing frame between both clubs. They alternate control, but Secret Club ends up on top. The Purple Hand Gang tries multiple wacky attempts to regain control, but keep coming up short. Some of them are pretty wacky, but the tables turn as Brian invents a new beatbox that's so loud it should drive the Secret Club away. It seems to be working, until Margaret brings out a speaker of her own and things get loud. Back at the office, Miss Oddbod prevents the war with a daily rotation per gang. The only problem is she forgot Fridays, and kids from neither gang are on it. Next episode, Horrid Henry Grown Up, shows us another interesting alternative reality. Before we jump too far ahead, Henry makes a huge mess at home and fights with his mom over cleaning up. Throughout the rest of the evening, Henry is forced to eat food he doesn't like and told to go to bed early. He starts to resent being a kid. Henry sneaks away to watch videos on his computer and he dozes off. When Henry wakes up, things are weird. Dad is talking to Henry as if he's an adult. He tells Henry to get Mom up, and she does a hysterical variation of the opening credits scream.
I don't believe I'm going to have to do this!
Henry's dad is totally inept. Next, Henry has to take care of his mom, but she refuses any of the food options except crisps, which she drinks directly from the bag. Henry takes Mom to the bus, and she acts hilariously childish. Henry wakes up from the fantasy and realizes being a kid isn't that bad after all, even if he just got sent to his room. The episode ends with the craziest fourth wall break yet. Hi, Mom. Episode 18, Horrid Henry and the Day of the Dinosaur, has one of the wildest premises of the show so far. After Peter annoys Henry multiple times, he gets mad. Like, really mad. So mad, he turns into a dinosaur. Don't you hate it when that happens? Whenever Henry turns into a dino, it's normally until someone tells him to stop being horrid. But this time, Henry's rage is so consuming that he wakes up the next day still in dino mode. Even Fang is afraid of him.
Eek! Henry's a dinosaur!
Henry goes through the motions, and we get some hilarious visuals of a dino trying to live a typical suburban life. When he gets to school, the other kids are terrified. After school, Henry recounts a day when he was ultimately ostracized for his new, scaly form. Henry walks into his room when he hears a cry for help outside. Miss Battleaxe's possum got stuck in a tree, and Henry finally puts his dino form to use. With his act of kindness, Henry turns back into a normal boy. What a surprisingly sweet ending to a really crazy episode. Series 3, Episode 20, Horrid Henry Alone at Home, finds Henry's family on the way to a pile of rocks called Stone Rock. Sounds super exciting. Henry runs inside to get his gross Class 0 comics when his parents leave without him. Henry starts to live like a king. If a king ate junk food and played with toy cars. He even sings. Radical. Meanwhile, his family has such a peaceful drive, it takes many kilometers before they realize they've left him behind. Mom calls babysitters and gets hung up on repeatedly. Meanwhile, Ralph comes over to Henry's. Henry and Ralph's freedom starts to get scary. The boys set a booby trap for the monster, but it turns out the monster was just Prissy Polly and vomiting Vera. And the trap hits Henry and Ralph instead. When Henry's parents come home, they get a bucket full as well. He is so getting grounded. Jumping ahead to episode 25, Horrid Henry in the christening crisis finds the family going out yet again, this time to vomiting Vera's christening. And she's as gross as ever. At the christening, Polly is acting extra, tacking on additional names to Vera, who promptly throws up all over her. Polly takes a seat, sets Vera down, and the baby crawls off with her cell phone. It isn't long before Polly notes Vera is missing. Peter and Henry separately go to find Vera. Henry crawls off and follows a trail of vomit to a reception room full of treats. Vera is under the table. Henry joins her to play games on Polly's cell phone. Peter finds them next, and everyone runs in. But Polly sees Henry with Vera and gives him all the credit. And Vera is super appreciative. Episode 31, Horrid Henry and the Movie Star, is the first part of a two-parter. Henry watches a film with one of his favorite actors, the fearless Phantom. He and Ralph try to reenact the Phantom's moves when they see a poster hung up for an upcoming Fearless Phantom film shoot. Miss Battleaxe announces the movie will be shot in the school, and students have an opportunity to audition. Margaret comes in hot and quickly gets dismissed. Henry, however, gets selected to help out on set.
Nope.
You what? Is that it?
Yeah.
It's super exciting. Henry finally gets his job. He has to watch the director's hat. The Fearless Phantom asks Henry for help in his trailer, and Henry drops the hat outside. In the trailer, Henry finds the Phantom is a scaredy cat. He's terrified of a spider. Henry has the Fearless Phantom walk out in character to cheers from the kids, and he accidentally steps on the director's hat. Henry, you had one job. Horrid Henry's perfect protest continues right where the previous episode left off. Henry is watching the hat on set, but more importantly, he's the owner of the picture's next star, Fang. Margaret also ended up landing a part. She's not going to win an Oscar anytime soon. She pushes back on the director and gets fired on the spot. She's not the only one. Willie Walter, a new character for season 3, gets it too. Worst of all, so does Fang. His role cut because the director wanted to buy another hat. Talk about throwing away the budget. Henry and Fang go to see the hamster that stole Fang's part. Hey, Fang has a crush. Henry hears a production assistant say the director fired Margaret for not being girly enough, Walter for being too wheelie, and Fang for being too greedy.
And the guy in the wheelchair?
Too wheelie.
Too wheelie?
Yeah, you know, all those wheels.
Henry does some directing himself and gets Walter and Margaret's friends together to disrupt the set. But no one's ready for Fang's big entrance. The director and crew run off and cut. Episode 38, Horrid Henry, Horrid Boy, begins with Mom discovering Henry has to submit a questionnaire for school on his performance, with most of the judgment factors coming from his home life. She tells him that he has to not be horrid for a whole week, starting with healthy food. Good luck. Next, Dad does Henry's homework for him so Henry can get a higher score. Henry gets right to work as well, watching TV. Worst of all, they turn off his music. Mom finally looks over the questionnaire and fills it in for him, but when Henry comes home with results the next day, their faked answers had his scores worse than if they were honest. Tough break. Episode 47, Horrid Henry Delivers the Milk, focuses on an unexpected pair-up of Paul and Henry. But first, we have a sweet scene with Peter and Vera. Oh, okay. She's throwing up again. Henry scoops her up next, and she gives Mom a cupcake with extra sauce. Henry gets sent to his room, but Pimply Paul offers to take him to work to show him proper behavior. Early next morning, Paul picks Henry up and shows him the milkman's life. How many people get their milk delivered still? What year is it? Anyway, they quickly encounter a rival driver, Eddie Edwards, who is stepping on Paul's delivery territory. Henry convinces him to do something to stop Eddie. Henry comes up with the idea to cover the milk route in reverse so they can beat Eddie to the customers.
I've been fighting evil Eddie Edwards for ages now, and I can't seem to get rid of him. He's always there before me.
His plan comes to life with some really creative animation. In the end, Henry presses a button in the milk truck that causes the bottles to be thrown off on the proper porches and accelerated faster than Eddie's. Sometimes being horrid can lead to some great ideas. Season 3, Episode 50, Horrid Henry Sells the School, begins with Miss Oddbod asking for volunteers to make a video. Henry and Margaret get selected. Oddbod reveals the video is to sell the school. Henry interprets this as the school literally being for sale. This is gonna be good. It isn't long before they have an entire film crew of other classmates. Margaret gives Henry the job of first assistant director. The next morning on their way to school, Margaret bosses Henry around, but they're still getting along overall, all things considered. They arrive and start filming. Peter gives a school tour with some hilarious highlights. In the end, at Oddbod's office, when she sees the video was made with a different intention, she asks who is responsible, and the duo replies by blaming each other. Up next is the series finale. Horrid Henry Goes Bananas, which is an interesting little detour. Margaret is back in the headmistress's office. We flash back to the day of the incident, and Henry is on a roll. He gets his yo-yo confiscated and doesn't do his homework yet again. Miss Battleaxe updates his assignment to sharing and caring. Even worse, Margaret has to oversee. Margaret takes full advantage. Starting at lunch, she makes him carry too many bananas, and if you think that sounds crazy, it is.
Mr. Stick your nose in a book in case I have to interact with a real human being.
Yeah, Mr. Stick, whatever in whatever.
Thank you, Susan.
They land on Mr. Soggington's, the school PE teacher's, head, who continues the story in the present. He explains how Henry's classmates removed the bananas when his back was turned, providing no evidence that they were there at all. Miss Oddbod says everyone should forget about the incident and move on. Unseen to all except the audience, she hides a banana that Margaret brings her. Henry goes to tell his version, but Oddbod dismisses him too. In the end, she lets him off easy. She looks at the cameras and says, sometimes it's not all bad at Ashton Primary. Like I said at the top, this episode is a bit of a non sequitur, but it's a fittingly absurd way to end the season. Which brings us to Season 4, which starts off with Horrid Henry's comic caper. Even though this episode was made only a year later, the animation has stepped up. Henry has a seriously bizarre nightmare. A monster steals his comic delivery, but luckily, it's just a dream. Henry luckily gets the expected package on waking, but nothing can prepare him for Mom's wrath. She takes the comics away until Henry cleans his room. He gets to it. Downstairs, Henry goes back to his comic. One problem, he still has to change the toilet rolls. Oops, that's not good. One more task stands in the way of Henry getting his prized possession, laundry. Eventually, Henry gets his comic when he blackmails Peter into retrieving his comic before Mom for the next issue. The episode ends with Peter going to the bathroom and getting a bit of a surprise. Series 4, Episode 3, Horrid Henry Does His Homework opens with him doing anything but. Henry and Ralph interrogate different classmates on which rock song is the best ever. Miss Battleaxe decides to get in on the conversation, and you might want to prepare your eardrums.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Miss Battleaxe plays on, and on, and on, and oh my, is she still going? It gets even weirder when Mr. Soggington joins with a banjo. The rest of the class gets brought in, and the two teachers duel back and forth until everyone is put to sleep. Miss Battleaxe sends him off with homework. Henry goes up to his room for homework and sulks. Margaret meets him by the window, and the whole class is outside waiting for Henry. The next day, everyone comes prepared with homework. Each person has a different instrument, except Henry. Battleaxe threatens more bagpipes when Henry comes up with a solution. The whole class joins in, and it's honestly epic. Alright, on to Episode 7 of Season 4. Horrid Henry, I Am Not a Hamster, focuses on an age-old tale of companionship between a boy and his scheming hamster. It's the weekend, and Fang celebrates by shredding his mini skateboard downstairs. He grabs Henry's comic and brings it up. Henry hears Margaret harassing him outside, but the last straw is when she calls Fang a rat. Huh, sweet revenge. Next, Henry's mom tells him to sort some laundry. Henry confers with Fang, and they decide to make it fun. Peter and Henry get to it quickly, and Henry gets banned from TV for a year. At long last, Henry sorts all Peter's socks, but Peter sabotages him and hides one. Fang springs into action and gets it back. Together, they make quite the rotten team. Episode 10, Horrid Henry and the Perfect Parents, is another wild fantasy. We begin with Henry taking his sweet time to get out of bed. It seems like a normal day, but Henry lays it all out in a fourth wall break. He speculates on what having perfect parents would be like. The grass definitely seems greener as Henry sings the praises of all of his friends' parents. Some of them are totally bizarre. Henry imagines his parents as if he were a king, totally compliant and catering to his whims, like doing his homework for him. When it's bedtime, his parents go to sleep while Henry stays up watching more TV. But by the fantasy's end, Henry finds his perfect parents totally overbearing. I guess you can't always get what you want. Series 4, Episode 12, Horrid Henry and the Phantom Phone, has Henry tapping away at his cell phone. In fact, that's all he seems able to focus on, during class and after. Margaret believes Henry is trying to add her to his contacts, but really he's just playing a game. She tries to see his screen, and chaos ensues. They both get sent to the office, and Margaret tells Miss Oddball that she wants Henry to add her to his contacts. She won't let up.
Ladies first, I think.
Yes!
The next day at school, Margaret hands Henry a sheet of paper with details to try and force him to add her. Henry hightails it out of there instead. Gotta admit, that was pretty impressive. In episode 14, Horrid Henry loses Rude Ralph, Henry is told to go upstairs to clean his room in a minute, which Mum times by counting the seconds out loud. He takes his sweet time. Ralph stops by and they head upstairs together. A photo finish, only a little unorganized. Henry leaves Ralph inside the cabinet with his dirty clothes. Mom directs Henry into the basement to keep doing laundry. Meanwhile, Ralph is still in Henry's room occupying himself. Downstairs, Henry rushes as usual and spills all the detergent. Henry runs back upstairs to find Ralph missing. Henry goes on a search far and wide. He really didn't even have to leave home.
Yeah, rude Ralph.
Why? Have you lost him?
Yes, I have.
Ralph was in Peter's room playing with him instead. All is well, except for the detergent suds. That's gonna be a mess. Series 4, Episode 21, Horrid Henry Takes the Blame, finds Henry and Dad sitting down for another wholesome episode of Gross Class Zero. One problem. He can't watch TV until he does his homework. That night, we get a super cool animal dance number. Mom finds the tablet that triggered their little performance and immediately blames Henry for not charging it. At the breakfast table, the blame continues. This reaches a breaking point when the tablet's battery is dead again the next day. Not even Fang fesses up. In fact, Fang teams up with Henry's cat Fluffy to destroy the evidence. These pets are a bit horrid too. Alright, episode 26, Horrid Henry's Movie Moments, has one of the most meta plots of the entire series. Henry and Aerobic Al are channel surfing when he sees a scene from the Horrid Henry live action film, which was released around the time of Series 2. Wait, what? Live action movie? That's right. In 2011, Horrid Henry was brought to life in a film where he refuses to do his homework, which leads to a whole crazy series of events where Ashton's primary nearly closes. Then, is saved by everyone's favorite black sheep. Back on the couch, Al sees a scene where Henry holds hands with Margaret at her all-girls prep school and asks, why? Henry tells his version of the story. Margaret and Henry creep through her school until they enter the headmistress's office. There's an intruder, though, who shoots slime at the office window. They make a discovery. They take some confiscated slime of their own and fire back. As the duo makes for war, Miss Battleaxe walks in. Actually, it's her twin. She says they need to sneak out, and the only way to do so is to dress Henry up like a girl. It's a perilous journey, but in the end, they do what needs to be done. Hope he didn't catch cooties. Birthdays are great, until they're not. Episode 30, Horrid Henry's Birthday Bonanza, goes deep into Henry's special day. Peter gets Henry up, who screams immediately. He does that a lot. Henry says to the audience that he is only acting unpleased because Mom and Dad told him that they wouldn't get him a present, but he knows it's a lie. He also gets a hint of existential dread. Peter comes in again and they start flipping through a scrapbook. It all makes him feel elderly. The news is that Henry gets his birthday wish: pancakes. Overall, and Henry is surprisingly misanthropic. Now it's time for presents. All his friends join in and they jaunt around the backyard like a manic dream sequence. Maybe this whole birthday thing wasn't as bad as he thought. Episode 37, Horrid Henry Gets the Message, starts with Henry going to see Ralph. And when he's not around, Henry looks for some other friends. No one is around to play, but it turns out they were working on a secret invention that's sure to change the world. That's right, it's Fart Chat, a contraption that sends fart noises virtually. On the street, Henry encounters Weepy Williams and a whole lot of others who get the message. Henry has no idea. Everyone is gathered outside Brian's house. He and Ralph unveil Fart Chat, and Henry finally gets the message, which is a series of fart noises. Translation please? What a wacky episode. On to episode 39, Horrid Henry and the Detention Club. Henry falls asleep during Soddington's lecture about his goldfish and has to go back to school the next day for Detention Club. Henry sees a few of his friends going in as well. Surprisingly, not Margaret. Oops, guess I spoke too soon. At the club, Battleaxe and Soddington lay down the law. No talking, no sleeping, and worst of all, each student has to do the unthinkable. Self-reflect on why they're in detention.
Ooh, we shall, Mr. Soddington.
Margaret doesn't stand for this, and as soon as the teacher leaves, she makes the exit early. She's dismayed by Tidy Ted, who tells the class a story about the goldfish, Goldilocks. By the time he's done, the teachers come back and detention is over. What's so important about that goldfish anyway? Alright, episode 40, Horrid Henry and the Evil Mastermind, starts with Miss Battleaxe singing a song that's a parody of Rocky Horror Picture Show's Sweet Transvestite. It's also really catchy. The kids are thrown off, and Henry sets out to discover why she's acting differently. Margaret has a theory. Battleaxe is being controlled by an evil mastermind and is now setting out to control students' brains. Henry suspects Peter and spies on him, but finds no evidence, just a really lame meeting of his best boys club.
Are you still coming to the best boys meeting, Henry?
Margaret decides to take things to a new level. She plants a tracker on Miss Battleaxe. They find her in Miss Oddbod's office. The only weird part is Oddbod isn't there. So who is Battleaxe talking to? Turns out she was just playing on the computer. Or was she? Up next, Horrid Henry and the Miserable Musical is, you guessed it, a musical episode. We get right to song and dance with the kids watching Fearless Phantom perform in a musical. Even Henry and Max like it. But the next day, something odd happens. Henry can't stop hearing his family speaking in song. The numbers continue with Ralph and Dad belting it until it spreads to Henry himself. He really wants to stop, but is unable. Henry and Ralph get the class to join them against Miss Battleaxe and promptly get sent to Oddbod's office. Henry lays it all out for Oddbod. It's an ending fit for Broadway. Alrighty, Series 4 finale time. Horrid Henry looks at love, finds Henry back in class when Miss Battleaxe says she loves a good equation. As Henry walks out, he points out how weird the word love is to the audience, but he's overheard by his classmates. Ralph questions who Henry could be in love with. Henry goes about his day trying to figure out love by looking for examples around him. Aerobic Al shows Henry's table up by playing harmonica to the girls' table, but it doesn't work on one person, Margaret. She asks Henry directly why they don't become king and queen, and tells him what that would look like in a funny dream sequence.
I'm king!
Yes, it only took a fantasy, but this episode realizes one of Henry's series-long goals, being king. Henry leaves his and Margaret's coronation ceremony and ends the series on a bit of wisdom. Love what you do, and do what you love. Surprisingly wise words from such a little troublemaker. Alright, series finale time. Let's see what Netflix does with Henry. First episode, Horrid Henry's Uber homework, has him striking gold with a new idea. An app that does homework. It's an immediate hit, and he soon has a pile of it that he cons Peter into doing. Brian updates Henry on the huge results. Henry sets a deadline for Peter, who stays up all night until he falls asleep in front of a book. Henry tries to wake him to work more, but Peter is out cold. Henry takes on the rest of the homework himself. By morning, everyone shows up with their work done except one person, Henry. Back to detention, I guess. Episode 2, Horrid Henry and the Lucky Thing, finds Henry with his mood deflated because Mom tidied his room and accidentally threw out his lucky thing. The rest of his boys assure Henry will be fine, but it isn't long before he comes into bad luck. That's gotta burn. Ralph and the rest of Henry's friends try to present him with other lucky objects to replace the old one, but he isn't receptive. His bad luck continues all day, with some classic antagonism from Margaret. After class, Miss Lovely gives him a new lucky keychain. Henry puts his new luck to the test. It works really well. Back at home, Mom tells Henry she found his lucky thing, but he throws it out. As he has learned, he can assign luck to anything. Episode 10, Horrid Henry and the Pet Show, focuses on man's best friend, his evil hamster. We open with Fluffy getting groomed by Peter. This isn't a routine brushing, though. Fluffy is being prepped to compete in the Ashton Pet Show. Henry goes for a walk with Fang, and they encounter Margaret, who also invites them to the pet show. They give her a warm reception. After reviewing the contest's booklet, Fang really wants to compete. Henry negotiates with Margaret for entry, and Henry gives his entire Gross Class 0 comics to ensure Fang wins.
Oh, Fang, don't tell me you want to go in for it.
Yeah.
Oh.
In Henry's house, there's a pet showdown as the competition heats up. It's gonna be a real nail-biter. Henry gets Fang prepared, including a ballet lesson. When he comes to a realization, Margaret is helping everyone else for payoffs. So Henry gives her a golden gizmo to guarantee Fang's success. At the show, Fang dances and collapses. Margaret disqualifies him and moves on. Well, yes, that's what you get for trusting a trickster. Episode 14, Horrid Henry How to Be Good, starts with another visit from Great Aunt Greta, who still thinks Henry is a girl. Mom goes to work, and Henry and Peter are left with their senile old aunt. She leaves Henry to do the washing up after dinner, but he lets Fluffy have at it instead. Henry blames the poor feline right away, and Great Aunt Greta throws Fluffy outside. Henry joins Peter and Greta in reading her old lady magazines. He puts his own spin on them, and things get a little wild. The magazine has a list on how to be a good boy, and if one of the boys completes it, they will get takeout as a reward. Peter takes the magazine upstairs before Henry can read it. Henry snaps a photo and studies it in his room secretly. He finds in it tasks like freshening up to be impossible. Just then, Henry's mom calls, and she's coming home early. Both boys get in a frantic race to be the best.
Who keeps their bin in a cupboard?
I do!
I'll take that, thank you.
With Henry remembering the article's author's words. Henry gets stumped on the freshening up, so he ties a bow in his hair instead. Henry's mom comes home, and he takes care of her. Then, the voiceover from the article reminds Henry of the actual title, How to Be a Good Girl in 10 Steps. He checks the article again, which is being read by Great Aunt Greta. He confronts her that he's a boy, but it's no use. I guess he'll always be Henrietta to her. Episode 20, Teacher Talk, gives a spotlight to Mom and Dad for a change, and Peter serves as our narrator. It's parent-teacher conference time. They head to school, and Mom gets a little nervous, but Dad reminds her they're Peter's parents today, not Henry's. What a relief. Meanwhile, back at home, Peter is cooking a house hot pot while fantasizing about the successful parent-teacher conference. But when they get to Madame Tutu, she talks about their other son, you know, the horrid one.
What's he done now, Madame Tutu?
Poof! What has he not done? He has used my dance studio as a football.
Mom and Dad move on to Wheelie Walter, who only has crazy stories about his experiments with Henry. They finally get to Miss Lovely, but Mom and Dad take the lead and talk the entire time. On the way out, Henry's parents are invited to try the cafeteria soup, which is made by none other than Peter. They return home, and who can blame them? Next episode 28, The Road to Nowhere, is a good old-fashioned family road trip. Great, it's Peter's birthday. Not. Peter gets presents, and Henry can receive one as well, but only if he's nice to Peter. Peter gets a telescope. Henry gets the ultimate guide to finger knitting. He won't be impressing any kids on the playground with that. Up next is Great Aunt Greta's gift, a GPS navigation system. Okay, not bad. Dad suggests the drive, and they get going. They meet a little old lady named. Very fitting. She sees them off, and the whole Henry party is ready to go, even Fang. They follow the satellite map, which is kind of temperamental. Henry gives Peter a green sandwich, which is totally not rotten, but Fang doesn't seem to mind.
Toasted cheese sandwich, Peter?
It looks a bit green. Is it past its sell-by date?
On the drive, the navigation map jumps around images, but Dad swears they're on the right way. Henry says, "Get me out of here," and the route changes yet again to one that is incredibly windy. It's just a little dangerous. The GPS gets them back on track, and all is well, except for the fact that everyone is sick from the sandwiches. I wonder how fast the GPS can get them to the doctors. Series 5, Episode 31, Horrid Henry and the Demon Dentist, goes to the scariest place for any kid or even adult, the dentist. On an average day of avoiding chores, Henry gets a chilling call that his next visit from the dentist is coming soon. Mom gets him scheduled, and Henry quickly starts acting sick, but she doesn't buy it. The next day at school, Margaret reveals she was the one who called with the reminder, causing Henry to get booked with a real dentist. Now that's evil. Margaret tells Henry that she stashed some gross Class 0 comics in the dentist's office in a secret cache. On the way to the appointment, Dad admits that he is still afraid of the dentist. The admission helps Henry. He comes out of the appointment totally fine, and even Margaret was honest about the comics. Okay, last regular episode of the series, Horrid Henry and the Hotel Horrid. Henry tells Ralph he needs to make some serious money to own every Killer Boy rat track, but he's grounded. Henry gets a call from Ralph telling him to look outside. Ralph says Henry can make money by renting out his fort as a club. Renting out the room is Fizz Wiz McTiz, keyboard player to Killer Boy Rat. She asks for the bathroom, but Henry's hotel doesn't have one. How many stars does this place have? Henry brings Fizz into his parents' house. In the hallway, Peter meets Fizz and is actually chill. She follows him to the back door. Henry rushes downstairs to ask about Fizz, and Peter says she's in the fort. Fizz ends up joining the family dinner after all and performs the best musical number in the show. This rocks.
Get down, be on your way. Have a good bad maybe day. Stand up, grow up, slow right down.
Fizz gets to stay in Henry's room for the night, and the boys have to sleep in Hotel Horrid. Unlucky guys. That's the end of the regular series episodes. But Horrid Henry's not done yet. We've got 2 movies to round things off. The first film, Horrid Henry's Wild Weekend, is actually a combination of the final 4 episodes. Peter narrates this one and sets the stage. He is staying at Great Aunt Greta's while Henry is about to embark on the Brain Box of the Year competition. Margaret, Anxious Andrew, and Beefy Bert are also selected. Henry doesn't want to go out of town and tries swapping places with another classmate, but none are available. Great Aunt Greta picks up Peter in a seriously cool bike, and they're off. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad leave for a date, and Henry screams no from the back of a bus on the way to the competition. Classic. On the way to the Brain Box of the Year, Margaret explains they are competing against the reigning champs, the Brickhouse Boys, for a prized cup. We intercut between Henry, Fluffy, and Fang acting up with the run of the house, and Great Aunt Greta treating Peter like a teenager. Margaret knows one question will be on a species of worm, Wormiscus basilicus del Mondo, and instructs Henry to call Peter for the details. Looks like he left his cell phone at home. Talk about party animals. Henry also tries calling his parents, who are stuck in traffic but doesn't reach them either. The bus reaches its destination, and it's stuck up Steve's house. What? Meanwhile, Peter bonds with Great Aunt Greta, who's taken to calling herself Groovy Greta. Gotta admit, she's pretty cool. She takes Peter on a bike ride next, even though he hasn't even had his tricycle lessons. Back at Stuck Up Steve's, his club ridicules the Ashton gang, whom he refers to as the Ashton Amateurs. He even takes everyone's phones, but Margaret keeps hers a secret and tells Henry to ring home. Peter comes home just in time and has no clue about Fang and Fluffy's party. Oof, a little harsh, but who can blame him? Peter and Great Aunt Greta head back to her place. Back at Steve's, Henry gets hungry. He starts digging into Bert's stash of treats. Margaret is about to sleep, but hears a phone ringing. She ventures out into the mansion to find its source. She encounters a landline, and on the other end is Peter. Steve takes the phone from her hand before he can say a word. And Henry's parents can finally drive out of traffic. We'll check back in on them later. It's the morning of the Brain Box competition, and the gang heads downstairs for breakfast when they meet the presenters. Hang on, something isn't right. These hosts are holograms. Willie Walter and Mr. Nerdin, a substitute teacher who fills in for Miss Battleaxe back in Series 3, are the machine's inventors. They attempt to get Margaret's signature on a contract to ensure they don't cheat, but she refuses, knowing that the Brickhouse Boys will do whatever it takes to win.
Contract. Everyone has to sign it to say they won't cheat.
We're not signing.
Walter watches the competition on TV and fast forwards for the audience to spare them the pain of seeing Ashton lose every round. He tunes in to the final question. Henry is asked what kind of animal Wormicus basilicus del Mondo is, and he correctly identifies it as a worm, but the hosts disqualify him on technicalities. On the stand, Stuck Up Steve's team phones a friend, their team mascot, and all is revealed. The betrayal! Henry gets Peter on Margaret's third phone. How many of those does she have anyway? Peter says he'll feed Steve the wrong answer. The question is, what other name is the Wormicus basilicus known by? Henry remembers back to a time when Peter identified it in his garden. It's the Empress of Worms. The episode ends with each member of the Henry family returning home, with Henry holding the prized cup in his hand. Peter tells Henry he ended up helping because Henry is his big brother. Ain't that sweet? Alright, on to the final film. Spoiler alert, it's the most epic adventure yet. Horrid Henry's Gross Day Out gives us the best look yet at Gross Class Zero. The intro is properly cinematic with an aerial pan down and a big title card. Henry's babysitter, Martin, who appears in a flashback all the way in Series 1, finds Henry on the couch, gearing up to watch a Gross Class Zero marathon. The TV is on so loud that Peter comes in and demands that Henry turn it down. Henry doesn't take it well, and Peter eventually gets out of the way. On the TV is Gross Class Zero, which is a class of school children with names like Fred Fartwell, Bogey Barbara, Zach Zitface, and Simon Snotful. They attend a presentation from Dr. Barfington, who unveils a remote-esque device he calls a PP. None of the other gross class can keep a straight face, and neither could I. Just then, the PP disappears. The gross class sets out to retrieve Barfington's remote, even though he secretly has another. The gross class uses a secret weapon, snot. Wow, that's really disgusting. They retrieve the PP but run away as Drusilla Drek, daughter of Emperor Drek, sicks her robot on them. Then something extraordinary happens. Bogey Barbara looks directly at Henry through the TV screen and asks for the remote, but it's too late. Drek makes it out. The gross class follows. There's an epic booger-filled battle, and in the aftermath, no one knows where the PP is, except Henry. He throws the remote to Zach, who gets chased off by another one of Drek's robots. Henry dives into the TV after them. If you thought that was action-packed, we're just getting started. Henry arrives at the class's hideout and is brought down to meet Ms. Clutterbuck, their teacher. She demands to know who Henry is, and he flexes his gross class lore on her. Hey, maybe he should work for Jartoon. Anyways, Clutterbuck pulls up a hologram of Darius Drek, the most evil villain in the known and unknown universe. Barbara takes over by revealing that the Dreks who chased the gang earlier are Darius's twin children. We're then taken to Drek's lair. Darius, in some pretty menacing armor, interrogates Damien and Drusilla on what they know about Henry. This can't be good. Back at the gross class hideout, Henry gets thrown into detention for making a joke, which triggers his superpower. The gross class are impressed and think Henry's yell will be a good addition to their powers of snot, bogey, fart, burp, and zit. I think they really need to see a doctor. On the radar map is a blip indicating Drek's robots, and the gross class gets ready. Back at his lair, Drek manically monologues on wanting to crush the gross class. On their TV is a feed of the horrid boy arriving. How is Henry getting out of this one? Gross class arrives at a planet that used to be one of the liveliest in the universe, but is now a ghost town. They roll out, but Barbara says Henry isn't ready and instructs him to stay put in the poop-mobile. Yes, it's really called that. He rushes out to watch the gross class in combat. They fart, belch, and snot their way through the battle. But it's no match for Drek. He takes the PP and ties up the entire crew. So Henry decides to yell. And they're gone. The PP remote switched them away. The Drek clan sets out to trash the known universe. Henry teleports back to his home with the gross class, who accidentally blow the back door off. The gross class heads out into the real world and have zero knowledge of Earth. Henry hides his new friends in his room before anyone can notice. Peter can tell something is up, but Henry keeps him at bay. In his bedroom, Fang corners the gross class with a snot slimer, and Henry reveals his collection of gross class gadgets and merch. Back at the Dreks, the Emperor sends his offspring to bring Gross Class Zero back. Peter ends up in Henry's room and quickly gets acquainted with Gross Class. They get along better than expected. They head downstairs and discover the TV room covered in slime, with Max still zoned out with headphones on. They have a bigger problem than a cleanup though. Drek's robot is still active. Peter suggests they hide the gross class in the fort. He runs off with them while Henry stays behind to fight the machine. He tries to scream, but it doesn't work in the real world. The robot grabs Henry and charges after gross class. They get in an epic battle, but Henry and Peter are more concerned with their mum seeing the mess. Just then, Margaret peeks her head over the fence, and when the secret club's fort gets destroyed in the crossfire, she wants revenge. Henry grabs a gross class gun and joins the fray, but it's Fang who causes Druella to be thrown from the robot directly into Margaret's yard. She asks for information on Henry. Margaret assures her that Henry is horrid, but she can be worse. Suddenly, a pink cloud overtakes the battlefield and Druella tries to get in Henry's head. On the sidelines, Peter brainstorms what his superpower could be. Just as Henry realizes he can fight back, he turns into a dinosaur. Peter finally unveils his power, air guitar. The sound waves seem to work for a moment, but when Drek's robots deploy shields, all hope is lost. Then, Fang and Henry's teddy bear, Mr. Kill, fly in. That's right, his bear from Series 1 plays a pivotal role in this final hour. The things that Henry possessed all along saved the day. Back at home, the Drecks are chased back into the TV screen. The Gross Class gang retreats into their show and all is completely, 100% normal. But just as Mum walks in, Fluffy presses the PP and the room magically cleans itself. They really dodged a bullet there. Henry and Peter end the series getting along. How can they not when they've been through so much together? And that wraps up the entire story of Horrid Henry. Was he as horrible as everyone says? Let us know in the comments. Catch you in the next one.